Rain drummed against the windshield as Ian Chandler pulled into the dilapidated parking lot of Sunshine Elementary School, his ancient Toyota groaning in protest. The digital clock on his dashboard flashed 3:15 p.m. He was late again. His 5-year-old daughter Lily would be waiting, and the thought made his stomach twist with guilt. Being a single father working 2 jobs left little room for punctuality, but he always promised himself he'd do better. Daddy. Lily's voice pierced through the rain as she bolted from beneath the school's awning, her yellow raincoat flapping behind her like wings. Ian jumped out, not bothering with his own umbrella. "Sorry I'm late, pumpkin." He scooped her up, her small arms wrapping around his neck with complete trust. "Miss Stevens waited with me. She's super nice and has pretty eyes like the ocean," Lily informed him with the solemn importance only a kindergartner could muster. Ian turned toward the school entrance, expecting to see one of the usual teaching assistants, but instead found himself staring at a ghost from his past. "Hello, Ian." The woman's voice was achingly familiar, though more polished than the last time he'd heard it 15 years ago. His heart stuttered. Natalie Nash, the elegant woman standing before him, bore little resemblance to the wild-haired girl who'd climbed trees and built forts with him throughout their childhood. This Natalie wore a tailored burgundy dress that even Ian, fashion-challenged as he was, could tell cost more than his monthly rent. Her dark hair fell in soft waves around a face that had lost its childish roundness, but gained a refined beauty. "Substitute teaching," she explained with a small smile. "Just for today." Ian became painfully aware of his worn jeans and the coffee stain on his faded work shirt. "You look," he faltered, suddenly 16 again and tongue-tied. "You look good too," Natalie said, saving him from his awkwardness. Her eyes softened as she glanced at Lily. "Your daughter is wonderful. She told me all about how you make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs." "Daddy's the best pancake maker ever," Lily declared. Natalie's laugh was the same a sound that had once been as familiar to Ian as his own heartbeat. "I bet he is." The school principal emerged from the building, calling Natalie's name. "I should go," she said, hesitation in her voice. "It was really good seeing you, Ian." "You too," he managed, watching as she turned away, wondering if 15 more years would pass before he saw her again. "Wait," the word burst from him before he could think better of it. "Maybe we could catch up sometime, for coffee or something." Natalie glanced back, surprise flickering across her face before it melted into a genuine smile. "I'd like that." She pulled a business card from her purse and scribbled something on the back. "My personal number, call me." Ian nodded, feeling the weight of the card in his palm like a lifeline to a world he'd once known. "Daddy, was that lady your friend?" Lily asked as they drove away. Ian stared through the rain-streaked windshield, memories washing over him. "A long time ago, she was my best friend in the whole world, even better than me." Lily's voice was suspicious. Ian laughed, reaching back to squeeze her knee. "Nobody's better than you, pumpkin, but Natalie was special." That night, after tucking Lily into bed with 3 stories and a promise of pancakes in the morning, Ian sat at his kitchen table staring at Natalie's card. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the ancient refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. "Natalie Nash, educational consultant," the card read in elegant script. He flipped it over to see her handwritten phone number and a small note. "Still remember our treehouse password?" Ian smiled. Of course he did. "Fireflies and freedom." They'd been 10 when they came up with it, swearing that no matter what happened, they'd always be friends. But life had other plans. Natalie's parents divorced when they were 16, and her mother whisked her away to Chicago. There had been a few letters, a handful of long-distance calls, and then nothing. The silence of adulthood had swallowed their friendship whole. Ian's phone felt heavy in his hand as he typed in her number. Before he could talk himself out of it, he pressed call. "Hello." Her voice was soft, as if she'd been waiting. "Fireflies and freedom," Ian said, surprised at how easily the words came back. The sound of her laughter warmed something in his chest that had been cold for a very long time. "I can't believe you remembered," she said. "Some things you don't forget," he replied. Like how you always ate the red jelly beans first, or how you cried when we found that dead bird in your backyard and insisted we have a funeral for it. Complete with your mother's good tablecloth as the shroud, Natalie added. She was furious. They fell into conversation as if no time had passed, talking about their childhoods, their lives since then. Ian told her about his brief marriage to Lily's mother, who decided parenthood wasn't for her and left when their daughter was barely a year old. He spoke honestly about his struggles to provide for Lily while working as a mechanic during the day and a janitor at night. Natalie listened, and there was no pity in her voice when she responded, only warmth and understanding. She was more reserved about her own life, mentioning that she'd built an educational consulting business, but glossing over the details. Ian didn't press. He remembered how Natalie had always been private about certain things, keeping her deepest thoughts close to her chest until she was ready to share them. "Would you and Lily like to have dinner with me tomorrow?" she asked, when it was nearly midnight and they'd been talking for hours. "I'm only in town for a few more days, and I'd love to see you both." "We'd like that," Ian said, ignoring the voice in his head that warned him about getting too attached to someone who would soon disappear again. The next evening, Ian found himself standing outside an upscale restaurant downtown, holding Lily's hand and wondering if he'd misunderstood. The place looked expensive white tablecloths, crystal glasses gleaming in the window. He'd put on his only decent shirt and helped Lily into her Christmas dress, but he still felt woefully underdressed. "Is the princess lady meeting us here?" Lily asked, bouncing on her toes. She'd decided Natalie was a princess after Ian had shown her an old photo of them as teenagers, with Natalie wearing a plastic tiara for Halloween. "She's not a real princess, honey," Ian reminded her gently, "but she's pretty like one, and she talks nice." Ian couldn't argue with that. Natalie appeared moments later, stepping out of a sleek silver car that screamed luxury. She wore a simple black dress that somehow looked both casual and elegant, her hair swept up in a loose knot that allowed a few curls to frame her face. Ian's mouth went dry. "You look beautiful," he said before he could stop himself. A flush of pleasure colored her cheeks. "Thank you, so do you both of you." She crouched down to Lily's level. "I especially love your dress. Purple is my favorite color." "Mine too," Lily exclaimed, instantly enchanted. As they entered the restaurant, Ian tensed, anticipating disapproving looks from the staff. Instead, the maitre d' stepped forward with a warm smile. "Miss Nash, your usual table is ready." "Thank you, James," she turned to Ian. "I hope this place is okay." "The chef makes amazing mac and cheese that I thought Lily might like." "Gourmet mac and cheese." Ian raised an eyebrow, relaxing slightly. "With 3 different kinds of cheese and little bread crumbs on top," Natalie confirmed seriously. "Life-changing stuff." Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. Natalie effortlessly engaged Lily in conversation, asking about her favorite books and games with genuine interest. She didn't talk down to her or use that cloying voice some adults adopted with children. Instead, she treated Lily's opinions with respect, earning enthusiastic responses and giggles. Ian watched them, something tender unfurling in his chest. He'd forgotten what it was like to share a meal with someone who made both him and Lily feel seen and heard. Since his ex-wife left, there had been a few dates, but they'd always fizzled out. Most women weren't interested in an instant family, and Ian wasn't interested in anyone who didn't understand that Lily came first. "Daddy, can I have dessert?" Lily's question pulled him from his thoughts. "Let's see," he said, reaching for the dessert menu and wincing inwardly at the prices. Natalie seemed to sense his hesitation. "It's my treat tonight, remember, and I happen to know they make ice cream sundaes tableside with sparklers." Lily's eyes widened. "Real sparklers, like on 4th of July, exactly like that," Natalie confirmed. "I think we should all have one, don't you?" After Lily's excitement over the spectacular dessert had settled, and she was contentedly coloring on the children's menu, Ian found himself studying Natalie across the table. "This place clearly knows you well," he observed quietly. "Your usual table," a flicker of something embarrassment, guilt, crossed her face. "I come here when I'm in town for business. The owner is a client." Educational consulting must be lucrative, Ian said, trying to keep his tone light. You've done well for yourself, Nat, she smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I've been fortunate. What about you? You always wanted to design cars, if I remember correctly. Ian shrugged. Life took a different turn. I'm good with engines, though, so being a mechanic works out. The hours are flexible enough that I can be there for Lily's school events. He didn't mention the second job, or the crushing medical bills from Lily's asthma treatments last winter that had wiped out his meager savings. You're a wonderful father, Natalie said softly. That's evident in everything you do and how you look at her. You should be proud of that. Her words settled something restless inside him. In a world that often measured success by bank accounts and job titles, Natalie saw what truly mattered to him. Thank you, he said simply. That means a lot. Over the next few days, Natalie seamlessly integrated herself into their lives. She joined them at the park, pushing Lily on the swings and teaching her to make daisy chains in the grass. She appeared at Ian's apartment with groceries, insisting on cooking dinner, revealing that the skills she'd lacked as a teenager had developed into impressive culinary talent. You don't have to do all this, Ian protested one evening as she set down a homemade lasagna that filled his small kitchen with mouth-watering aromas. I want to, she said, her expression earnest. Being with you and Lily. It makes me happy, Ian, happier than I've been in a long time. There was a vulnerability in her admission that made his heart constrict. He wanted to pull her into his arms, to see if she still fit against him the way she had when they were teenagers, and he'd comforted her after her parents' fighting grew too loud. Instead, he busied himself with plates and silverware, afraid of misreading the situation. How long are you staying in town? He asked, the question he'd been avoiding. Natalie's hands stilled. I was supposed to leave tomorrow, but I've extended my stay for another week. She glanced up, meeting his gaze. I have meetings I can't postpone after that. A week. 7 more days before she disappeared again. Ian nodded, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in his chest. Will you come back to Chicago with me? The words tumbled out of her in a rush. Ian stared at her. What? Not forever, she clarified quickly. Just for a visit. You and Lily, I could show you the city, introduce you to my friends. Her fingers twisted together nervously. I don't want to say goodbye again, Ian, not yet. The offer was tempting a brief escape from the grind of his daily life, a chance to see Natalie in her world, but reality quickly intruded. I can't just take off, Nat. I have jobs, responsibilities, and Chicago isn't exactly a budget-friendly weekend trip. I'd cover everything, she said immediately. Flights, hotel, everything. Pride flared hot in his chest. I can't let you do that. Natalie's expression softened. It's not charity, Ian. It's a friend wanting to spend time with people she cares about. It's complicated, he said, running a hand through his hair. You've been amazing to us this week, but I don't know if it's a good idea to blur the lines any further. Hurt flashed across her face, quickly masked. Of course, I understand. The evening that had started so promisingly became strained, conversation stilted. After Lily was tucked into bed, Natalie gathered her things to leave. Natalie, wait, Ian said as she reached the door. I'm sorry if I was harsh. It's just my life is here. Simple, sometimes difficult, but it's what I know. Your life is different. Is that really what's bothering you? She asked quietly. The difference in our circumstances, isn't it obvious? You're living some kind of charmed life, and I'm barely keeping my head above water. What could I possibly offer you? You think I care about any of that? Disbelief colored her voice. The Ian I knew would never reduce a relationship to financial terms. The Ian you knew didn't have a child depending on him, he countered. I can't afford to make impulsive decisions anymore. Is that what this is to you? An impulse? Natalie's voice had gone very quiet. Because for me, it's about reconnecting with someone who knew me before I had anything, someone who liked me just for being me. The raw honesty in her words made him pause. What aren't you telling me, Nat? There's something you're holding back. She hesitated, then squared her shoulders. My company isn't just an educational consulting firm. It's one of the largest educational technology providers in the country. We develop learning software used by schools nationwide. She took a deep breath. I'm worth quite a bit of money, Ian, more than I ever expected to have. Ian let out a low whistle. Define quite a bit. Enough that I never have to worry about bills again. Enough that the word millionaire applies. Her eyes never left his face, watching for his reaction. Understanding dawned. The expensive clothes, the luxury car, the way she casually picked up checks without glancing at the total, the business card that understated her position. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Because I wanted you to see me, not my bank account." Vulnerability crept into her voice. "When people find out, they change. They either want something from me, or they put me on some pedestal I don't belong on. I just wanted to be Natalie again, your friend who used to get grass stains on her knees and knew all the words to your favorite songs." Ian stood silent, processing. He thought of how she'd bonded with Lily, how she'd slipped back into his life as if she belonged there, how carefully she'd avoided flaunting her wealth. "You're still that Natalie," he said finally. "Money doesn't change who you are at your core. And who you are is someone I've always admired." Relief softened her features. "Then don't push me away because you think our different circumstances matter. They don't, not to me." "It's not that simple," Ian sighed. "I have a daughter to consider." "And you think I haven't been considering her too? Lily is amazing, Ian. Getting to know her has been one of the best parts of coming back here." Natalie stepped closer. "I'm not asking for promises or commitments. I'm just asking for a chance to see where this could go." The earnestness in her eyes undid him. This was Natalie, the girl who'd helped him bury his pet turtle with full honors, who'd stood up to bullies twice her size on his behalf, who'd taught him to dance before homecoming so he wouldn't embarrass himself. "Okay," he said softly. "We'll visit. But I pay for what I can, and you have to promise not to spoil Lily too much. I'm trying to raise a decent human being here." Natalie's face broke into a radiant smile. "I promise to keep the spoiling to a reasonable level." She stepped forward, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Thank you for trusting me." Ian hesitated only a moment before returning the embrace, surprised at how right it felt to hold her. "I've always trusted you, Nat. That never changed." 2 weeks later, Ian found himself staring out the window of an airplane, Lily bouncing excitedly in the seat beside him, her face pressed against the glass. He still couldn't quite believe he'd agreed to this, taking time off work, letting Natalie arrange everything despite his protests, stepping so far outside his comfort zone. "Daddy, the clouds look like cotton candy," Lily exclaimed, her earlier fears about flying completely forgotten. "They sure do, pumpkin," he agreed, smiling at her enthusiasm. Natalie sat across the aisle, engrossed in something on her tablet. She'd insisted they fly first class, overriding Ian's objections by pointing out that Lily would have more room to move around. He had to admit, she was right, his daughter's energy level would have been challenging in the cramped economy seats. Watching Natalie work, her brow furrowed in concentration, Ian was struck by how seamlessly she navigated between the successful businesswoman she'd become and the warm, playful person who'd spent hours building a blanket fort with Lily in his living room last week. She must have felt his gaze because she looked up, her serious expression melting into a smile that made his stomach flip like a teenager's. She mouthed, "Okay," across the aisle, and he nodded, returning her smile. Chicago overwhelmed Ian from the moment they landed. The scale of everything, the airport, the traffic, the towering buildings, made him acutely aware of how small his life in their hometown had become. Natalie guided them effortlessly, arranging for their luggage to be delivered separately, leading them to a waiting car with a driver who greeted her by name. "Your place or the hotel first?" the driver asked. Natalie glanced at Ian. "Hotel, please, Marcus. I think we could all use a little time to settle in." The hotel turned out to be one of the city's most exclusive, their suite larger than Ian's entire apartment. 2 bedrooms, a living area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and amenities that made Lily squeal with delight, especially the enormous bathtub with jets that Natalie promised they could try later. "This is too much," Ian murmured when Lily was exploring the second bedroom, marveling over the child-sized robe and slippers laid out for her. "It's actually my company's regular accommodation for visiting executives," Natalie explained. "We have a standing arrangement with the hotel." Ian raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Okay, I might have requested a few special touches," she admitted, gesturing to a vase of wildflowers identical to those they used to pick in the meadow behind her childhood home. "But I meant what I said about not overwhelming you both." Her thoughtfulness touched him deeply. She'd remembered his favorite flowers from their youth flowers most people considered weeds. It was such a small detail, yet it spoke volumes about how well she still knew him. The next 3 days passed in a blur of carefully planned activities. Natalie had clearly put thought into creating experiences that would delight Lily while also giving Ian glimpses into her life. They visited the Children's Museum, took a boat tour on the river, and spent an afternoon at a nature center where Lily could observe animals up close. In between, they enjoyed meals at restaurants that somehow managed to be both upscale and child-friendly throughout it all. Natalie never once made Ian feel like a charity case or a project. She treated their outings as adventures they were sharing, delighting in Lily's reactions, and finding quiet moments to reconnect with Ian when his daughter was distracted. On their 4th day, after dropping Lily off at a supervised children's program in the hotel that she'd been begging to attend, "They have a treasure hunt, Daddy." Natalie took Ian to see her company's headquarters. The sleek building downtown housed hundreds of employees, all of whom seemed genuinely pleased to see Natalie. She introduced Ian simply as an old friend, but the warmth in her voice when she said it made several of her colleagues exchange knowing looks. In her corner office, with its stunning view of the lake, Ian finally got the full picture of what Natalie had built. Awards lined the walls, alongside framed magazine covers featuring her company's innovations. A screen displayed real-time data showing how many students worldwide were currently using their educational platforms. "This is incredible, Nat," Ian said honestly, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "You've changed education for millions of kids." Natalie shrugged but couldn't hide the pride in her eyes. "We're trying. There's still so much work to do to make quality education accessible to every child." "How did you get started?" he asked, genuinely curious. She gestured for him to sit on the small sofa by the window. "Remember Mr. Harrington, our high school computer science teacher?" Ian nodded. "You were his star pupil." "He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself," she said softly. "After my mom moved us to Chicago, I was so angry and lost, I acted out, almost got expelled. Mr. Harrington had moved here too. He was the one who tracked me down, convinced me to channel all that anger into something productive." "I didn't know that," Ian said, thinking of the handful of letters they'd exchanged before losing touch letters where she'd mentioned struggles but never the full extent. "I didn't tell anyone how bad it got," she admitted. "I was ashamed. But he helped me apply for scholarships, get into a good computer science program. I started developing learning games as a college project, and it just grew from there." "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you," Ian said, reaching for her hand. "When we lost touch, I should have tried harder to find you. We were kids," Natalie squeezed his fingers. "And you had your own challenges, your dad getting sick, having to work to help support your family." She looked down at their joined hands. "Actually, you were my inspiration in a lot of ways." "Me?" Ian looked skeptical. "You never gave up, no matter how tough things got. I remembered that when I wanted to quit." She met his gaze directly. "When my first company failed and I lost everything, when investors laughed me out of meetings because I was just a girl with a cute little education app, I thought of you and how you'd just keep going." The admission hung in the air between them, weighty with years of unspoken connection. Ian was suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how her eyes held the same flecks of gold they had when they were teenagers, and he'd first realized he had feelings for her beyond friendship feelings he'd never acted on because he'd been too afraid of ruining what they had. "You give me too much credit," he said finally. "I'm just stumbling through, trying not to screw up too badly." "That's all any of us are doing," Natalie replied with a small smile. "Some of us just have fancier surroundings while we stumble." Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition that despite the vastly different paths their lives had taken, they still understood each other on a fundamental level. The rest of the day passed in a more personal tour of Natalie's Chicago. She showed him her favorite bookstore, a tiny coffee shop where she'd written her first business plan, the park bench where she sat when she needed to think. These glimpses into her life felt more intimate than any physical connection could have been. That evening, after putting an exhausted Lily to bed, they sat on the suite's balcony with glasses of wine, the city lights creating a glittering backdrop. "Thank you for today," Ian said, watching how the night breeze played with strands of Natalie's hair. "For showing me your world." "Thank you for being interested in it," she replied. "Most people just see the success, not the journey." Ian studied her profile. "Are you happy, Nat? Really happy?" The question seemed to surprise her. She considered it carefully before answering. "I'm fulfilled professionally. I'm proud of what we've built, the difference we're making." She paused. "But there are empty spaces too. Success isn't the same as happiness." "What would make you happy?" he asked softly. Natalie turned to face him, vulnerability naked in her expression. "What I've had these past 2 weeks connection, laughter, sharing my life with people who see me, not what I can do for them." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Being with you and Lily has filled spaces I didn't even know were empty." The honest admission cracked something open in Ian's chest. Without overthinking, he reached out to brush a strand of hair from her cheek, his fingers lingering against her skin. "I've missed you for 15 years, he confessed. "I just didn't realize how much until I saw you again." Natalie leaned into his touch. "I looked for you online a few years ago," she admitted. "I found your profile, but I was too afraid to reach out. I thought you might have this perfect life with no room for old friends." Ian laughed softly. "My life is far from perfect. It's perfect in the ways that matter," she countered. "You're raising an amazing daughter. You're kind and honest and hardworking. Those are the things I've always admired about you, Ian." The distance between them seemed to shrink, the air charged with possibilities. When Natalie spoke again, her voice was barely audible. "We leave in 3 days. I don't want to say goodbye again." "Then don't," Ian replied, surprising himself with his boldness. "Come back with us, stay for a while." "I have responsibilities here," she said, regret coloring her words. "And I have responsibilities there," he acknowledged. "So where does that leave us?" Instead of answering, Natalie leaned forward and pressed her lips to his a kiss so gentle it felt like a question. Ian answered by drawing her closer, deepening the kiss until it became a conversation about all the years they'd missed and all the possibilities that still lay before them. When they finally pulled apart, Natalie rested her forehead against his. "I don't have all the answers," she admitted, "but I know I want to figure this out. I want to see if we can build something real." "Me too," Ian said, realizing as he spoke that nothing had felt more true in years. "We'll make it work, whatever it takes." Their remaining days in Chicago took on a dreamlike quality. By day, they explored the city with Lily, whose enthusiasm never seemed to wane. By night, after she was asleep, Ian and Natalie talked for hours, filling in the gaps of their years apart, discovering the adults they'd become while recognizing the children they had been. And there were more kisses tentative at first, then growing more confident as they rediscovered each other. They moved slowly, both aware of Lily sleeping in the next room, both understanding that whatever grew between them would affect her too. On their final evening, Natalie took them to her actual home, a beautiful but surprisingly modest brownstone in a historic neighborhood. Unlike the glossy perfection of her office, her house felt lived in and personal, filled with books and art and photographs. "This feels like you," Ian said as she showed them around. He paused before a framed photo he recognized the two of them at 16, arms slung around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera during their last summer together. "My favorite picture," Natalie said softly, coming to stand beside him. "It was on my desk through college, in my first apartment, and every place I've lived since." The admission hit Ian like a physical blow. All these years, while he'd been building a life without her, she'd kept him close. "Daddy, look." Lily's excited voice broke the moment. She stood in the doorway of what appeared to be a home office, pointing at something inside. "Miss Natalie has pictures of me too?" Curious, Ian followed his daughter. Sure enough, displayed prominently on Natalie's desk was a framed photo of Lily from their day at the park last week, her face alight with joy as she swung high into the air. "I hope that's okay," Natalie said, suddenly looking uncertain. "I didn't want to forget a single moment of our time together." Ian turned to her, emotion tightening his throat. "It's more than okay," he managed. "It's perfect." Later, after a home-cooked dinner and putting Lily to bed in the guest room, Ian and Natalie sat in her small garden, fairy lights twinkling overhead in a scene so peaceful it seemed removed from reality. "I've been thinking," Natalie said, her fingers laced with his. "About what happens after tomorrow." Ian tensed slightly, preparing himself for the practical constraints. They both faced his life anchored in their hometown by Lily's school and his jobs, Natalie's responsibilities to her company here in Chicago. "I can work from anywhere," she continued. "At least part of the time. I'd need to be here for board meetings and some client presentations, but most of my work is digital." Hope flickered in Ian's chest. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying I want to try." Natalie turned to face him fully. "I want to rent a place in town, see if I can split my time between there and here. Get to know Lily better, see if what's happening between us is real outside of this bubble we've been in." "It's real," Ian said with certainty. "At least for me." "For me too," she whispered. "But we need time, Ian. Time to be sure, time for Lily to adjust, time to figure out how our lives can fit together." Her pragmatism was one more thing he loved about her, that she thought not just of their feelings but of the practicalities, especially where his daughter was concerned. "I think that's wise," he agreed, "but I have one condition." Natalie raised an eyebrow, waiting. "You let me pay my own way," he said firmly. "I know you have resources I don't, and I'm not too proud to accept help when Lily needs something I can't provide. But for us, I need to contribute equally to whatever this becomes." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "This isn't about money for me, Ian. It never has been." "I know that," he assured her, "but it matters to me. I want to be your partner, not your project." "Partners," she agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. "And for the record, I've never seen you as anything less." The following afternoon, as their plane lifted off from Chicago, Lily chattered excitedly about when they might see Miss Natalie again. Ian smiled, remembering the goodbye at the airport, not tearful this time, but full of promise and plans. Natalie would come to visit in 2 weeks, and they'd already scheduled video calls until then. "Daddy, is Miss Natalie your girlfriend now?" Lily asked suddenly, her perceptiveness catching him off guard. Ian considered the question carefully. "Would it be okay with you if she was?" Lily nodded solemnly. "She makes you smile a lot, and she knows how to make the best blanket forts." "Both very important qualities," Ian agreed seriously. "Plus," Lily added, lowering her voice to a theatrical whisper, "I think she loves us." Ian's heart swelled. "I think you might be right, pumpkin." 6 months later, Ian stood in Natalie's garden, their garden now, since she had sold her Chicago brownstone and permanently relocated to a house just a few blocks from Ian's apartment. The transition hadn't been seamless. There had been adjustments and compromises on both sides, but they had approached each challenge as partners, just as they'd promised. Natalie had converted the home's sunroom into an office where she ran her company remotely, flying to Chicago when necessary, but spending most of her time in town. She'd become a familiar presence at Lily's school, volunteering in the classroom, and helping to modernize their outdated computer lab with an anonymous donation that wasn't really anonymous to anyone who mattered. For his part, Ian had quit his second job, using the extra time to enroll in evening engineering classes at the community college, pursuing the dream he'd abandoned years ago, with Natalie's enthusiastic support. They were still navigating the financial disparities in their relationship, finding compromises that preserved Ian's pride while acknowledging Natalie's desire to share her resources with the people she loved. And she did love them fiercely, openly, completely. The sentiment was fully reciprocated by both Ian and Lily, who had taken to calling Natalie Nat, and seeking her out for everything from homework help to butterfly identification. As Ian watched Natalie and Lily planting spring flowers together, dirt smudged on both their cheeks, he marveled at how life could circle back in unexpected ways. 15 years ago, he'd lost his best friend to circumstance and distance. Now he'd found her again, not just as a friend, but as the love he hadn't known he was missing. "What are you staring at?" Natalie called, looking up to catch his gaze. Just the two most beautiful gardeners in the world, he replied. Lily giggled. Daddy, come help. Nat says we need strong muscles to dig the big holes. That's right, Natalie agreed with a wink. And we have something important to plant. As Ian joined them, kneeling in the soft earth, Natalie reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I was going to wait until tonight, she said softly, but this feels right. Ian's breath caught as she opened the box to reveal 2 rings, one a simple band, the other set with a modest diamond. Lily helped me pick them out, Natalie explained. We thought maybe we could plant our future right here, in this garden, with roots deep enough to weather any storm. Tears pricked at Ian's eyes as he glanced between Natalie and Lily, who was watching with barely contained excitement. Can we be a forever family, Daddy? Lily asked, hope shining in her eyes. I think we already are, Pumpkin, Ian said, his voice thick with emotion. He turned to Natalie, taking her soil-streaked hands in his. Yes, he said simply. 1,000 times yes. As Natalie slipped the ring onto his finger, then let him do the same for her. Ian thought of all the twists and turns their lives had taken separating them, only to bring them back together stronger than before. How the struggling single father and the successful millionaire had found their way back to what truly mattered. Not wealth or status, but the lasting bond of 2 souls who had always been meant to find each other. And in that sunlit garden, with Lily dancing circles around them and Natalie's lips pressed against his, Ian knew with absolute certainty that the richest man in the world wasn't the one with the most money, but the one surrounded by the most love.